So here's the big thing with ERP. Part of ERP and getting better is all about, and the big axe to grind I have with most therapists that I have these days is essentially the way they treat OCD. They don't really look at the real McCoy, and that is essentially who's the real self. Who's the self you want to be? Is the self that you want to be essentially somebody who's always fearful? No, you don't want to be. But if you think about the specifics to that, that person, then you get to a very, very deep layer of why your OCD just keeps coming back. And that is, you have to be able to do occult whatever you're going through right now. You're in fear, and I get it. Like, you're always checking something, whether it be locks, whether it be something about your body, but you're checking something constantly, and it's like just there. And you don't really know at some point what is real, what is OCD. It just becomes so clouded. It's almost like someone in the cave. You're always seeing dark, and it's like that's the new normal. That's the woke, the new normal for you. It's like normalcy is now just being in the dark. Being completely just obstructed with blackness, with the absence of light, and that's kind of just your eyes get shattered as a result of your vision gets shattered as a result of not being able to see light, not being able to be condensed, not to be able to have your eye muscles, yeah, your interoral interocular eye muscles being exercised as a result of the light dependency, and being able to actually dilute and contract, which is also exercising it, and which gets weaker. Now that's kind of a scientific, prologue to what I wanted to say before. But the main thing that you have to be thinking about is who's the self you are without OCD. And the reason I'm asking this is because if you don't have a hallmark and a blueprint and a flagship version of yourself, like a zenith of who you can be without OCD, then you're not going to rock with the role. You're never going to be able to rap with the real self. You're never going to be able to be tuned with the real self. You're always going to wonder, who am I? Is this real? Should I be able to be OCD? Should I have this OCD? Should I have these obsessions? You're always going to be asking this question. You're always going to be trapped. Now, the main thing about this is that the parody of it is that if you can't see through the smoke, you will never be able to see through the fire, right? And the way to do it is then to ask yourself, in a way, is this OCD or not? Now, I know you know the truth. If you lock the door, for instance, once, you know the door is locked, but your OCD will keep convincing you a door isn't locked. In my case, I'm quite funny to say, but I have that fear of eye pain. In one way, my brain is kind of caught up to a bug, and it's like it said, if in the condition somebody punches me in the face and I get, now my eye muscles are hurt. My eyes are so needed for sleep. It's facilitating sleep. It needs to keep moving to facilitate sleep. In the case where my muscles hurt, then I'm going to be really suffering. And that's kind of what I thought, is I'm now kind of at the bomber. I'm now at the end of my own tether, because I don't know really what to do. Now, that's clearly OCD, because normal people just don't think like that. Most people would just not be worrying about if they get bumped in the eye. Most people do, and it's like it's no biggie. Like, you can just continue your life. It's not as if it's the end of the world. You can sleep it off. Even if you have an injury, say, for example, 1 month ago, as a mere example, I've been to the gym and I've really injured my hand. It was really, really, it was really bruised. It was like almost a fracture. I think I just looked at my finger and I can still kind of see it. It's kind of still a bulb, but in the moment, I didn't fear, am I gonna sleep tonight? I was in pain, but my fear wasn't, am I gonna be obsessing about my hand the whole time? Or am I going to be obsessing, or I injured my foot? Another example is I injured my foot like a week ago, and I wasn't thinking, I'm going to be obsessing about my foot the whole time. Am I going to be thinking about my foot the whole time whilst I'm lying in bed? I didn't I didn't think about these things. I didn't really worry. Um, my I had a good night's sleep that night, or relatively good night's sleep. Because I was in pain, my body needed more hours of sleep to be able to heal. So the obsessional me would have obsessed about my hand. The obsessional me would have obsessed about my foot or my stomach, right? But here was I wasn't really worried about it. And the reason is not because I shouldn't have been worried about it, but because I wasn't obsessed about that specific problem. My obsession is not with my hand. My obsession is around, and here's the big thing. It's a kind of a logical thing. How my OCD plays, and usually there is a logic to OCD. It's can be quite convoluted, but it's clearly there. The logic behind my OCD is that I know that when you're laying there in bed, you're trying to sleep, there's something happening. Your body is active, and there are specific mechanisms to how your body facilitates sleep. The one of them is that your body goes into a type of freeze response where everything goes limp and frozen in a way, except of course for your breathing and your eyes. Yes, your eyes. Those two muscles, those two places in your body are essentially accelerated. So they become more active. And this is kind of where my fear latched on. But the breathing wasn't a problem because, I mean, of course, you think that, if you're worried about your eyes and about them getting damaged, why aren't you really worried about your breathing? Why aren't you worried about something punching you in the stomach? And that same awareness you can kind of transport to your breathing and being worried about that whilst you're trying to sleep. Because, of course, it makes complete sense. If I'm worried about it with this one thing in my eyes and saying, well, if they get damaged, I would really struggle to get to sleep because they have to get activated to facilitate sleep. The same thing can be said for my breathing. But I think the difference to me is I would be able to be conscious of my breathing even if I were to get punched in the stomach. And yeah, even if it's not perfect in that way, in that regard, I've been punched in the stomach, I have pain, breathing makes it a bit worse. But in a way, I'm not as sensitized. I don't know why, but I'm not as sensitized with my breathing. I think it's just because it's all about neurotransmitters and all about, just your fingertips. There's a lot more sensory information or sensory processing in your fingertips. As a result, it's more sensory loaded. And the same thing with your eyes, it's very sensory loaded. It feels gross in a way. And I think it's that gross factor kind of makes me wanna it makes me worry more about it. And it's like it's just easier for me to be hyper aware of my eyes because like maybe I just have this uncanny ability to feel my eyes all the time. Like I've since I was like 17, I just always felt my eyes. I was just so aware of them the whole freaking time, and I don't really know why, but it's like this. It's a kind of a sensory thing. It's like sensory overloaded, and maybe it's just one of those things where my I was just extremely aware of my eyes when I was pretty young, and maybe it's just buying into that where this awareness is actually the main reason that I'm still struggling to actually get over this. Um, but kind of suffice it to say, that's kind of my fear. My fear is that my eyes are kind of grossing me out. I don't know what it is, but it's like when I'm laying in bed and just the fear that my eyes might be damaged, that muscles behind them it's grossing me out. And at the moment, the moment that I kind of get that fear about something being damaged or something sticking into that, or even my eyes drying out, it's like, or even them moving, it's just like it's grossing me out in the moment. And I just can't physically get over that. That's my problem. And it contributes to a lot of fear and a lot of obsessions because even the thought that I'm trying to sleep and just my eyes rolling in the, you know, it's not really the rolling that's as much of a problem. It's the fear that if they would be injured, the rolling would aggravate it. That's kind of that's the main fear behind it. Is in the moment it's also anticipatory. I wouldn't know what to do in the case where it would be damaged. Like I would imagine my eye muscles kind of bleeding, and then they're moving, and this kind of they would get more savagery. They will get more butchered as a result of moving. And it's that fear. It's like that. It's grossing me out in a way. So I really have this problem where I'm kind of grossed out by the ocular the ocular part of the body, the eyes, and it's a gross thing. I don't know, but the eyes are kind of grossing me out, and maybe it's this grossing factor that kind of like interplays in my OCD, what causes me so much anxiety, so much drift with this. But I'm not trying to say that there's kind of logic behind it or anything. There is clearly logic behind it why I'm feeling the way that I currently do, but it's definitely a combination of stuff, but it's really difficult for me to kind of admit it to you guys, even long-time subscribers, because it's difficult for me to kind of get even and say, but I gotta do it. Look, the reason I started this channel was because I had to come up front with myself. I complained about a lot of stuff in the past, and I realized that there was so much that I could be thankful for. Now I am now I am at the pit of hell. Now I realize and I look back and I think I've had time. I've had time. I could spend hours and hours applying for jobs if I really wanted to. I could go drive or take a bus into the city, the center city. I could take a car. I could start driving. There was so much I could be doing, and I was so ungrateful for my life. I was always complaining, and part of my promise to everybody on the channel is I want to be new. This is me being vulnerable. I'm really struggling with anxiety, really struggling with obsessions, and maybe you guys can just help me, or maybe you guys can just, add on a comment, or just tell me, you know, maybe you also have the same fear. Maybe I'm not just alone with fearing this weird things about my eyes. Um, Maybe you got kind of the same fear, can kind of up the thumb there and say, I'm also struggling. I'm also in the foxhole with this thing, because it's really just it's been a year now and it doesn't really get much better. There is a curve, of course. It's kind of a logarithmic function to this thing, but it is still very just challenging because my OCD makes me grossed out at my eyes, and the fear that they might get hurt, and the anticipatory anxiety that if they get hurt, what would I do? And the constant checking, are they hurt or not? Did something happen today? Have I missed something? Those questions also come up, and so yeah, it's just really really challenging, guys. It's just really challenging. I really wanna. I think that this sleep OCD has taught me quite a lot about myself, but also it's also made me hungry for to be able to get better. It made me hungry in order to get healed, finally healed, so I can go back to my old life. That's essentially it. Um, I'm feel to I'm positive and I'm feel to be the old person again, and to be able to go and recollect and re-hug the old being that I was before all of this started. And maybe it was time that it started so I could see, who what I had in the life that I led, and how thankful I could have been for having the family that kind of nurtured me and supported me all through this, and also just the type of person I was, that I had my limitation, I have my flaws. I'm clearly not the most intelligent person in the universe. There are far more intelligent, intellectually, cognitively advanced people than I am, and that's okay. I don't really like it. I think I could have been better if I had an IQ of 180 plus. I could have become a physicist or a mathematician or stuff, but it's okay. It's the second best version. I'm not going to try and push this out and, stalwart this topic of, self-sacrificialness, but it is something I thought about quite a lot, is perhaps if I really were maybe absolute just a, boy genius when I was young, I probably would have struggled more in my life. Maybe I would have struggled more with these cognitive defects. And the thing is, the more active your brain is, the more able you actually are to kind of convert, or in a way, you know how can I, to kind of convert to this, or program yourself to become, your brain is much more malleable. So I mean, you can definitely get into a bit of a craze, or a frenzy, if you will, into a very very bad and dark place. And you don't really want to go there. So of course, it makes much more sense to say, hey, wait a minute. But I actually don't want to be that smart. I actually don't want to have an IQ of 180 plus, because I wouldn't want to be an Einstein. Hell, what would have happened to me then? But anyways, so this is me. I mean, I definitely would tell you that, I would have, if without my obsessional thinking, I would definitely want to be the person who is able to cope with life, who is able to even think about my eyes being hurt and not really being phased by it. To just laugh it off and be, yeah, I'm not really grossed out or anything by it, or anything that I could really make of it. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Me in a perfect nutshell of who I really want to be, who I wish I could have been, and I would say that that is me in the upper echelons of being, in the celestial uppers of who I really want to be in life. And I think that I don't really know about your vision. Maybe you can come and comment and actually talk about how you would want to be without OCD. But I would just say that that would be me. I would be the person who essentially goes in life and not being afraid anymore of this thing. And I think that is what exposure is going to be for me, is to become acquainted and comfortable with that person that I want to be, and live that person, the life of that person more and more. and be okay with, the uncertainty that prevails, even though I am living that life. I don't know how I will get there, but I think that is essentially what is the next step for me. So yeah,